Okay, what about the ready state? We're talking about some of the positions that we see athletes adopt to allow them to get into better shapes before they lift, before they move. So one of the things that you'll see is that in all the great kettlebell languages of the world, the kettlebell is usually set up in front of the athlete's body. And one of the things that happens in this position, as you might think, is why are they putting it away? Why do we start in this position? One of the things that we know is that a lot of our athletes potentially are missing some hip flexion, right? That we know that we should have easily in a long-legged position be able to get to a 90-degree shape. And if I can do that, then that we say that, hey, that's a pretty full or complete position in terms of hinging. One of the things that happens then is that when we see athletes pick up a kettlebell that's not far away from them, and we'll come back to that in a second, is that we end up seeing a lot of rounding in order to get to the kettlebell, which means that I begin with this sort of less than athletic position, an athletic position or a position that doesn't transfer very well, which means I'm gonna have to stand up and then reclaim that shape. So it's not an accident then that the kettlebellistas started putting the kettlebells further away. And what this allowed our athletes to do was to use their available range of motion, create a better position so that when they started off, they were in a less than hip flexion sort of restricted position, and suddenly they're in a better position to swing. So when I lift off and take that thing back, my back is in a slightly better organized position to transfer to sport and athletics and things we're trying to do, right? Well, it's interesting because we see the same thing with some of our powerlifters. Some of our big strong men end up wrapping themselves up for their big pulls, and one of the things you'll see is that they end up rolling the bar to them to get set up. And so they're setting up in this position, and immediately you should recognize why they're here. Because one of the things we're trying to do is practice not only getting the spine into the best position that we can prior to moving, how do I optimize my organization based on my own tissue restrictions or anthropometry and the demand of the load, the demand of the task, but also how do I pressurize in that position? And what you'll see is that in this shape, I have a lot of access to my positions. Let's say that I started here and bent down and just tried to reclaim the same breath. I'm just exaggerating the fact that I probably can't get my back flat. Of course, I had that option. But in this position, my breath volume is greatly inhibited. So when we see athletes setting up for their big deadlifts, they're oftentimes in this position, which allows them to create not a position that's challenged by hip range of motion, the bar out, and so they can get a big breath here. Versus when you oftentimes see athletes pressurizing from the bottom, when they don't have a lot of access to this, they reach down and try to grab the bar, bring the hands in to solve this problem, right? I don't have the range of motion to get into a setup, hands automatically come in. Difficult to pressurize there. So what we're doing is expanding the conversation about when do I pressurize and what are the tricks of the trade to use the implement, use my body to get into a position where I can get the most air in or pressurize simultaneously, asking my body to get into the best organization that's available to me in the moment. So hopefully you can start to see this pattern and realize that our best athletes in the world are hyper clever at developing techniques that allow them to lift, move, jump, run, generate as much force as possible. Let us know how it goes.